We are just a few minutes before the meeting officially starts. So
Recording in progress.
Good evening. Calling the September 21st, 2023 Public Art Commission regular meeting to order. Roll call. Commissioner Gordon.
present.
Commissioner Taylor.
Present.
Commissioner Woltuck.
Present.
And Commissioner Miyagi.
I am attending remotely for just cause, and I have one person in the room with me.
And the relation?
My fiance, and she is over 18.
All right, and Senior Shen present. Okay, do we have any agenda changes, additions, or deletions? None. Okay. Do we have any public comments?
Not at the moment.
Okay. I guess first item, approval of minutes from August 17, 2023 regular meeting.
I'll approve minutes from the August 17th regular meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call. Commissioner Miyagi?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Gordon?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Woltuck?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Minutes approved. Do we have any city official comments?
Yes, we do. We have some fun things to share with you all this evening. So the first item is the Midtown Residents Ice Cream Social. Thank you to our chair and vice chair who bravely womaned a table. There are a couple of images there. It was a very well attended event. And the commissioners, and I was there for part of the time, had some really great exchanges with the Midtown residents about public art. So the next item is to let you know that The Roth building work has begun, and so here we have installed the protections for the Arnatov frescoes on site.
Oh, wow.
Including on the right-hand side there, you see some of our vibration protection. So we're constantly monitoring as they do demolition and removal of various elements inside the building, that it is not impacting the plaster or the frescoes. The third item is we have 2 upcoming workshops. They're the final 2 with artist in residence Kirti Basendine. They're both taking place September 27th, one from noon to 2 and one from 5:30 to 7:30, both at the Rinconada Library. And the third item for members of the public, we have lots of slots available for volunteers to help us with code art. So there are lots of great things that you can do to help out with this incredible event. Historically, we have drawn between 7,000 and 10,000 people, and all of us seated at this table can't do it alone. So we welcome any members of the public who would like to roll up their sleeves and lend a hand. And then the final thing is, you'll notice you have cards here for Carberly Artist Studios, the open studios, which are taking place November 4th from 1 to 5 p.m. Many of these artists are new in 2023. So if you didn't get to the spring open studios, I encourage you to go to fall, because there's lots of new exciting artists.
Right.
And the second term artists have really grown and evolved as their time has gone. So that is it for official staff comments.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Non-action items. I think we have a public art and private development.
Yes, so we are joined today by Chandra Cerrito, who's the public art consultant, and the applicant project team. This is for an initial review for public art and private development associated with 660 University. This is a highly visible site at the corner of University and Middlefield Road. And so they're here to walk you through the site and the plans and some of their initial thoughts on locations of artwork, potential types. So they're here to seek feedback from the commission as they move forward with their artist selection.
Shall I jump in?
There's Chandra.
Yeah.
Yes, Chandra, take it away.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Elise, and good evening to you, commissioners. It's really nice to be here. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully that will go well. Here we go. So as Elise said, I'm here to kind of give you an introduction to this project, which I think is perhaps new to this commission. And first we'll start with sort of where it is in the city, a little bit of context, which hopefully you had a chance to review the materials ahead of time, and this will just be a review. So 660 University is here, as Elise said, in a fairly prominent location on University Avenue between Middlefield Road and Byron Street. And you can see on this larger plan that 101 is kind of northeast, I suppose, of this location. And then south and west would be Stanford, just to give you a little orientation. A little closer view. So this is the actual block on which the development will be. Again, surrounded by Middlefield Road and Byron and on University Avenue. You can see directly across the street is Lytton Gardens Assisted Living. And then another view where you can actually see, an aerial view here. So I want to give you a sense of, what the buildings around it look like, and the fact that there are quite a number of trees. And you'll see as we go through a little bit of the design that the trees were actually a significant factor in how the architects and the developer thought about what this building should look like and the look and feel. So I just kind of pointed out adjacent to this new development, as you can see, is a very large oak tree. And that was an important tree to preserve through whatever design was completed for this project. So that was a priority to make sure that that tree would survive and would continue to enhance the whole block as well as this new development. And then across the street, there's a nice grove of trees as well. So that definitely kind of helped the architects think about the importance of nature at this site and wanted the building to complement that. So here we'll just start with a rendering of the building, and we're kind of standing on University at Middlefield Road. And this building will be a 4-story residential building. On the ground floor, there will be an office space. And from this view, it's on the left side on the lower level, on the ground level. So that will be an office space. And you can see it has a separate entrance to enter the lobby for that office space, which on this in this rendering is numbered 660. And then further to the right will be a lobby space for the residences. So it would be the residential lobby, and with its own entrance as well. And you can see that it's very contemporary design, very, it's still in progress. The design has been developed and evolved, and at this stage, I think it's getting quite close, but it hasn't been finalized. But it's very nicely articulated with balconies and setbacks, and has some really nice finishes as well. There's a lot of attention given to the landscaping. So there are these built-in planters to really create a lot of green space and, a fairly tight urban environment. And then on the rooftop, there's actually a garden. So there will be trellises that have plantings, as well as solar canopies. So really just kind of bring as much nature in as possible. And then I'll just kind of walk you around the building. So this is the view from Middlefield Road. We'll see the opposite side. So this is Byron Street. So this would be where you would enter the parking garage, which is below grade. So there's a parking garage below grade. And then an elevation of the rear of the building. And here you can see that a rendering of that oak tree and, kind of its, how large it is in scale with the building. This is just a proposed material board, which is, still again being developed, but this does include some board formed concrete, which would be on the lower portion of the building. And also some wood texture panel, again, bringing that sense of nature in, the wood slats on the trellises up on the rooftop. And then, of course, the structure of the trellis and the solar canopies also on the rooftop. There'll be clear glass and then some, metal from metal mullions and accents, and then some horizontal siding panel. So I wanted to really talk with you tonight about where we're heading toward an art plan for this site. We've actually kind of looked at a couple versions of the design and have settled on these 2 locations that we think could be really exciting for public art. So these 2 locations indicated in red, just on a plan view, so you get a sense of orientation, are facing University Avenue, which of course is probably the most public and major street. And we definitely wanted to kind of allow that sort of accessibility and visibility there. And this view is a little more helpful probably in getting a sense of scale and really where these would land on the building. So we are thinking that an artist would work on both of the locations. We're not seeing these as options, and hopefully we can afford both. But I think what's pretty great is the architect really gave a lot of thought to how to make this artwork really feel integrated. So they're sort of given their special place that's inset within the finishes of the building. And I think that's just a really nice complement to the rest of their design, while also kind of standing out, having a chance to shine in both locations. So the first one is on the ground level, and that it's actually a wall that's almost perfectly in the middle of the 2 entrances that I mentioned. So the entrance to the office on the left and the entrance to the residential lobby on the right. And there's a ramp that is, you can access both of those, that starts basically where this public art is. So this public art is going to be super accessible, particularly to pedestrians, whether they're just walking by or coming up to the building. and certainly very visible on the street itself. So if you're on a bicycle or another vehicle on University, this should be, very, very easy to see. So we really like that, and it's something that you can come up and touch, kind of interact with, which is nice. Alternately, the second location is on the elevator shaft, which is extending almost to the fourth floor here. So it's quite tall. It's 30 feet tall, as shown. And I'm kind of thinking about that in a different way, almost like a banner for the building, kind of something that you would notice at a distance, something that will help identify the building, so that you have really different experiences with these two artworks. It does offer, different vantage points, whether from the ground or from a distance, up close, far away, and sort of, something a little bit more intimate and something kind of shouting a little bit more. So I think that's a really nice opportunity. We are thinking about potential media. There are, of course, a variety of media that could work, but we're most excited about either a tile or mosaic artwork. And materially, it could be fantastic. Mosaic and tile are some of the most durable and easy to maintain outdoors, which is obviously a huge priority for public art. And even though they, are so long lasting, you can bring in all kinds of color and it will not fade. So that's always one of those challenges. How do you bring in color for public art and not have it fade over time or chip or any of those things? So we're really excited about the possibility of that. Also, it just opens up a huge world of potential imagery, whether it be abstract or representational. We could go in so many directions. And I think that would be a really nice counterpoint to the very elegant and, thoughtful architecture, but it will really kind of create some sort of pop or maybe a little sense of, something more personal and human. And it will really help signify the building. Which is definitely something that the architects and the developer are thinking about, knowing that this is a location that is somewhat of an entry to the downtown of Palo Alto, and they want it to feel like something special is happening. And I really think the artwork will play a big part in that. The other thing that I'm particularly excited about in working on this project, which has been a pleasure, is the principals of Smith Development, who are building this building, Boyd and Lund Smith, are actually very deeply connected to the city. They grew up in Palo Alto and went to high school there and graduate school there. So they genuinely want to contribute something meaningful, special, something that will be appreciated by the community. And I'm really, really happy to have them helping us steer toward artists and artwork that will feel just right. And I know they also, as I mentioned, just wanted to really offer something to the city that kind of is a wonderful gateway piece to invite people to downtown and to signify that they are entering downtown. So that is where we are in thinking about this art plan. And as I mentioned, we would be selecting one artist to work on both areas, which I think offers a really nice opportunity for kind of a dialogue between the two artworks and for feeling very kind of cohesive within the building. So I am happy to hear any comments and questions. I really look forward to any input you have.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate the fact that you have identified such publicly accessible locations for placement of the proposed public artwork. I think that's really welcomed, and that really reflects the purpose of public art, which is really intended to be available to the public.
Any other comments from the commission about possible locations or themes or thoughts on the materials? Support or comments on anything that was presented so that they can go off and begin their artist selection process would be really helpful.
I have one question. So I understand the architects grew up here. Are you looking for a local artist, or do you have a sense of if you want, is it open in terms of who you're looking at? Or are you looking at somebody also from this area?
It's actually pretty wide open, and it's the developers who are actually from Palo Alto. I'm not sure if any of the architects are, but the developer's pretty excited just to find an artwork that feels very fitting to them for the city, and that the city can be proud of. But they don't feel limited to necessarily featuring an artist from Palo Alto. I think they're pretty open-minded.
And do they have a theme that they're thinking about?
The only sort of very, very loose potential theme is this idea playing off of the celebration of nature. But I think it's going to depend really primarily on which artists really kind of land in terms of feeling right. And then when that artist is hired and brought on board and learns more about the building and the city and the site and the audience, where is it that they want to go? I always like to give an artist a lot of leeway because all of the creative ideas come from them, and I'd rather not dictate too much, but we will certainly immerse them in all the sort of inspirations that have gone into the building and the developer's experience of the city itself to help kind of feed them some inspiration.
Thank you.
Chandra, welcome. And I'm so delighted that the developers hired you to handle this project. I mean, it's going to be very exciting. That building is in a prominent place, and the artwork going in is going to be pretty large scale. So I'm glad they have a professional helping guide them to determine what should be going there. When you said interactive, it kind of made me start thinking that is at ground level, that one large wall area. And I do believe mosaics are beautiful, and we've had some interesting play with mosaics in recent banners that we've done near California Avenue. And so I do believe they'll be well liked. But when you said interactive, what you just mean that they'll be at the ground level and maybe approachable, I guess,
yeah,
right? We're not thinking of
touch them. You can
Right.
actually experience them up close, especially something that is so touchable. We probably wouldn't want moving parts and things that could get damaged. The longevity of the artwork is going to be very, very important.
Yes. Okay, good. And I especially like that they are taking nature into consideration, because in that space, that's taking up a full block. So it is going to be felt in the city of Palo Alto. We're not used to having that area be, I think that's 3 stories tall, that building. So it will be nice to have some art and nature around it to kind of help soften it and help the residents get used to having a larger building there. So
that's good feedback. Thank you.
Hi, Chandra. It's nice to see you. I'm going to second Lauren and Sinya's comments. I'm looking forward to seeing the artists that you select. I do have a question, though, a little bit about lighting. So at night, I know it depends, of course, on the type of material used, but sometimes mosaics can look a little dark at night, or a lot of art can look dark at night. So do you have any thoughts about the lighting?
We actually had super initial, just I would say very cursory discussion about the fact that it would be interesting to explore lighting on the artwork. Hopefully something that's very simple and integrated with the building. So it number one doesn't, sort of isn't overlit and, too much distraction for the people who are around there and living across the street, etc. But also, as you probably know, lighting can get incredibly expensive. We have a relatively modest budget, and I really want to make sure that we can do a lot with the artwork. So that's one of our early discussions that we'll be having is let's be thoughtful about when the building lighting is designed to think about how can that illuminate the artwork in the best way, so that it feels cohesive and also, you know, hopefully is streamlined in terms of the budget that it will take to do that.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. With no additional comments, should we move to the next item?
And thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Keep us
Thank
posted.
you.
Okay, thank you.
And next we have action items. The first action item is public art in private development, and this is public art in private development at the location of 3200 Park Boulevard. This is the former Fry's site development project.
Great, thank you. So we're joined by Jennifer Easton. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello.
So we're gonna, let's see, we have an initial presentation to share, right? Just to introduce the project for a second before we turn it over to the applicant team. So this is the former Fry's site. There's been a lot of discussion about it. And in fact, it came to council last week. And so we're really excited to see the proposal for the public art at that site. There's been a lot of interest from the community and from council to have the artwork reflect the history of the site and that Ventura community. Okay, so we are having a little technical difficulty. So perhaps we turn it over to the applicant team to do their presentation, and then I can follow up with sort of the outreach thus far. But this project, as a quick reminder, has it came for an initial review, and then they came for an interim review once they had their art consultant and an artist on board. So the commission had a chance to weigh in on the locations, the themes, and the project artist. Oh, let's see.
Yeah.
There we go. You know, there's always gremlins in this room with the technology. So, okay, so this is really just summarizing some of what I was saying. Let's go on to the slide. Right, so this kicked off in December 2022, meeting with staff and discussing potential opportunities for integrating artwork on site. They decided to divide it into two phases. So the first phase, and the construction is in two phases, would have art on site with approximately half of the budget at $420,000. And phase two would be an in lieu of payment of $420,000. So that was the tentative plan that came forward to the commission. January 2023, they came for their initial review. May of 2023, they came for an interim review, and then they're here today for final review. And the next slide should summarize some of the feedback from the commission. So supporting that phase one, phase two approach. Also supporting public art that celebrates the history of the project and its nearby community. Support for their selection process and the team's selection of their artists that they've selected. And also the commission recommended considering architecturally integrated artwork, given the very limited constraints of the site that we agreed upon for integrating artwork. So now we will turn it over to our to the applicant team to walk you through the proposal they're coming forward with this evening. So Jennifer Easton, it's all you.
Thank you. Okay, let me bring this up. We always say those technical gremlins. Yay. Righty. Da-da-da. All right, are we seeing my screen, I hope? The presentation screen?
Yes.
Thanks. So good evening, Commissioners. Jennifer Easton, art consultant for the 3200 Park Boulevard development project. And as Elise has just stated, we did indeed really appreciate the Commission's previous comments. They've been very insightful and helpful to our project development and also in our collaborations with the other boards and commissions that we've had to work with. So your support of the ideas of something that blends both the contemporary artistic vision of Gyeonggi-shin and the history of the site, little ideas such as potentially using mosaic for that reason. Thank you, Chandra, for teeing up the beauty of mosaics as well for sites. The interplay with the artwork with the potential or the historic panels that will be done on site. I will say that we're furthering that dialogue. The developer has brought on board a team who's developing a conceptual program for those historic panels, and they've already asked to see the concept from the artist to look for ways of blending both locations and design styles. So that was a really insightful and important comment test. So again, just our appreciation for your participation to this point, and we're really excited to bring this forward tonight. So just as a reminder of our project site and the development area of the first phase, so that will be the existing cannery building will where in the red area to the right of the red dotted area is the area for the new housing, which will be phase 2 of the project. So again, as a reminder, here's the building project as the redevelopment will look like, or the redesign of the building, keeping the historic monitor roof line, and then rewrapping it with the historic look of the corrugated metal, and keeping some of those historic elements to the building as well as the interior timbers, which will be seen both through the glazing and through a skylight that's in this retail area that you're seeing. So this would be the interior. I don't know why my computer isn't wanting to page down, but oh dear. I can do this. It's deciding it's, alrighty, this is not fun. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Yay. All right. So this is the south elevation of the building. There's, as you all remember, that funny little mural that's here along the building facade that wraps to the west face. And then, so the area we're talking about for the artwork is this, would be the south east end of the building. So this specific, where you see the color change in the corrugation, and then on the east elevation, here's the entire east elevation. This will be the new parking, small 2-level parking structure, and then there'll be a run of this mid-height corrugation, and that will be the other location for the artwork. And now I'd like to turn it over to our artist, Gyeonggi-shin, to walk you through her proposal.
Hello, I'm Gyeonggi-shin, and I am super excited about creating an artwork for this really site with a very interesting history. So if you could go to the image that you're seeing that you just saw was a painted photo work that I do. It's in the style that I use in my studio work. And so in the public art design for this site, I wanted to kind of use this style of combining photography and other pictorial elements. So I could go to the next images. So this is the flattened out image of 2 sides of the building, and you'll see the context of it in the next slides, but it's a very long format. So I was thinking of it as almost like a panorama, and I wanted to kind of introduce a kind of enfolding narratives that that commemorates site history, the agricultural history, Thomas von Chu's cannery, the school that was at the factory, the workers, and Thomas von Chu and his workers. They're represented photographically, and I also have labels from the Bayside cannery and apricot blossom fields of Santa Clara Valley and some flowers, apricot blossoms as well. And I also wanted to introduce more kind of a more recent or early technological innovations that happened in Palo Alto. So I also have several images of those. So I'll go through those details in the next slides. So if we go to the next
Right.
slide.
There we go.
There you go. So this is the south facade where retail front. So a big part of it is actually the glass glazing window and door entrance to the shop. And so I'm using the border of the location to introduce photographic images and the landscape images combined together. The portrait on the left side is from the school that was present at the factory. And we just had a meeting with Gloria, Thomas von Chu's granddaughter, and she confirmed that her mother and uncle was in this school portrait as well. So we thought that was also very special. And on the right side, there is part of the photograph that continues onto the other side, but on this side, on the front facade or south facade, you see Thomas von Chu represented on the right side. And the next image shows, if you look at the upper left corner, you could see it's in a tiny picture, shows the east facade. It's really foreshortened because of the angle, but it's a very wide wall. And in that image, you could see, in that design, you could see the photograph that includes from Thomas von Chu continues wrap around on the left side. And it kind of, as you move along the pictures, you see the Bayside Cannery, apricot. Yeah, this is what it looks like.
Sorry, girl. Sorry, keep going. My bad.
The cannery label, and you also see the, this is not the total image, but you see a kind of close-up image of workers who worked at the Bayside factory, and also overlaid as a green line rendering is a line drawing made from the actual asparagus can label. And it Thomas von Chu's factory was famous for, or Thomas invented a square shape asparagus can that allowed it to stay, not move around, so the asparagus won't be damaged. So it was very kind of considered a innovative design. So we wanted to incorporate that. And then as you move to the right, I have 3 images that refer to a little more recent technological evolution or innovations that happened in Palo Alto. The machine that looks like a strange, that has strange triangular shape is an instrument that prototyped at Varian Brothers, who one of the brothers went to Stanford, and the other brother was a pilot, and they went back to Stanford because they wanted to invent a at the time the radar wasn't invented yet, and they wanted to create something that would allow the military to detect the airplanes at night when they could not see visibly. And this was an early prototype, which eventually they worked with the US, I think, government, along with a lot of other engineers, to come up with technology to be able to defeat Germany. And of course, a Mui Bridge, the horse studies that was done at the Leland Stanford Ranch, was a very important in photographic history, as well as early film development. And then the yellow outline shows the first PC that was made by Hewlett Packard. This is not the first PC ever, but this is done at the industrial park at Stanford. And so I wanted to represent Hewlett Packard PC, and also it's kind of visually more interesting shape. So these images are also overlaid over the fields of Santa Clara that shows the agricultural landscape of the early Santa Clara Valley. So let me see. So yeah, by introducing all these different elements, I wanted to create an artwork that really commemorates the rich history of the site and a site's location, the amazing story about the Thomas Chun Fu, as well as the technological innovations that happened in the city, and also an homage to the Fry's location that was also there before.
Thank you.
So,
and then this is.
oh, and that is the example. Do you want to talk about it?
Oh no, you go ahead. You've worked with them.
So we are planning to fabricate it at the Mosaicos Vizintianos. I don't know what the M stands for.
Venezianos. I think it's Venezianos.
Veneziano, not Vizintianos.
Yeah.
Venezianos. It's a factory in or artisans in Cuernavaca, Mexico, and I've done a few projects with them. But we're using an example of work that they did for LA Metro, designed by McLean Thomas, because of the, I think, complexity of the image. I thought was similar to what I'm doing. And as many of you already are probably aware, glass mosaic has amazing capacity to introduce vibrant colors and variety of colors, as well as the longevity, because it is, of course, glass is not fugitive. The color will stay forever, and extremely durable as well. And this fabricator is one of the best that in the world, I have to say. So I'm super excited to create another project with this fabricator.
Yeah. And the other thing that I'd add is that we've been collaborating, as Kyung-Mi mentioned, with Gloria Hom, who is the granddaughter of Thomas Funshu, and she's actually invited us over to look at her collection of ephemera from this period. So while this is generally the look and feel of the mural, there may be some changes to elements after we have a chance to review that collection. Maybe higher resolution images come forward, or different labels, things like that. But we'll definitely would come back if there's significant changes. But we're just really excited to be able to collaborate with her on bringing some, these what Kyung-Mi has in here are actual things, but their elements may switch out for different reasons. So that's just a really exciting opportunity for the project. Just so you know, the way this project is actually going to be installed is not directly applied to the building, because there's a lot of interest in the historic nature of this building, and the corrugation. The developer and the team thought it would be also a great way to increase the longevity of the piece, to actually mount it on panels, something similar to what I'm showing here, which is a rain screen, where you have the building is waterproofed, and then you have these elements that hold off the panels that the artwork will be applied to. And you can see this, I'm just showing an example of a little reveal, which is similar to what would happen here. So the mural won't go all the way to the ground, but there will be a reveal element in the piece to allow also to keep from getting damaged, and pieces like that. So just as a kind of a insider look on how we're looking at potentially installing this piece. Just details, this is our budget for the project. It totals to the $420,000. We're right at that level, so we'll be working with the design team to see how we can make sure that we come in on budget for the project. We're pretty confident that we can deliver the concept pretty fully at the budget we have. So we're looking forward to working with the design team on completing that. And then this is the timeline for the project, that we'll be working to complete integration of the art design and integration into the building by this next spring. And then contracting with the Mosaic company in the winter of 2025 with fabrication in spring through December. They need about a half a year to do the fabrication. We may even start fabrication earlier. There's no reason not to, and then delivery and installation in the spring of 2026. So that is it for our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions, and I'll just back this up to the beautiful image that Kimmy has created.
Do we have any members of the public with their hands up to speak? And any members of the public present who wish to speak to this item? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful presentation. I guess the first question I have is, maybe you said it, but I didn't quite catch it. The element of the floral element, can you explain the reason behind that?
The flowers are the apricot blossoms, and the Bayside Cannery was made a lot of apricot cans, and I think that was also a lot of apricots were the reason why that was happening was because there was a huge amount of agricultural farming growing apricot in Santa Clara Valley. So I wanted to make that connection, visual connection to the history.
Got it. From the Valley of the Heart's Content to Silicon Valley. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I really love what you've done. I love the combination of technology and agriculture because I think it is so resonant with what Palo Alto is and the history. And I think you've done just a really beautiful job, even if it is still initial ideas. I think the layering, the complexity, the depth is really special and unique to this area. I don't think there's a lot of things that are like that around here. So I think it's going to add significantly. I just have a question about, this looks very smooth and flat. I don't see the aspects of mosaic. Is it actually going to be a mosaic, or is it going to be smooth? I understand the mounting on the panels, but is it going to be mosaic on panels, or is it going to be more one surface?
The mosaic, each mosaic is about half an inch square size, so that they will have a pixelated look, so to speak. At this kind of a distance, I think it will read as a smooth image, but as you come closer, it will kind of break apart as a pixelated rendition. So
you will really get the kind of gradation of colors, which I think is really nice in this.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
It's similar to what you're seeing here, the McElwain Thomas, where if you stand back here, it looks very flat, but if you come up close, and that's the nice thing, is because we are right across from the park, where the future park, or along the bike path, and I think it's you always think about how people approach the work, and if you're going by on your bicycle, you kind of get this big kind of billboardy size kind of. It hits you on a large scale, but if you go up, it's a completely different piece and a completely different experience. And so it's a great question, because you really will get, and you can see the colors that mosaic that they get in the studio, how rich it is to just get up close to it and just kind of fall into it in a way.
And I think that's really special for the viewer to be able to see it on all those different levels. So that's nice. Thank you very much. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Jennifer, I have a question about the how it's going to be mounted. It's going to be away from the wall, which I think is really good, because it gives a little more dimensionality to the project. Now, is there going to be some sort of a frame around it, or something that would kind of set it off? Because you said the bottom would be open a little bit.
Yeah,
I guess allow for air to pass through there, and don't allow moisture to build up, and that sort of stuff. So,
great question. So what we've talked about with the design team at this point is, let me use my little, so this cap here, are you seeing where I'm pointing at the top here? Is that this is little kind of, there's at the top of the mosaic, there is actually an edge that wraps around. And that needs to be there for the kind of the the building waterproofing itself. And that continues along to the left and the right edges, so far left, and then along the east side to the far right. And then what we were discussing is where it comes to a corner, that we'll probably have to kind of come up with some solution that actually kind of comes through the two pieces and then gives it a little bit of a frame, wraps it around those two pieces, probably pretty thin, because you don't want to introduce too much of a vertical there, but I think there will be somewhat of a little bit of a wedge in there that kind of wraps that edge, so as they abut each other, they're actually protected. So there's a frame on the top and then the sides and then that little bit where they come together. And then I think it's a TBD at the bottom. I think that's going to be a technical question and also an aesthetic one. And we don't have an answer, but I have talked to them. We've talked to them through the top and the sides at this point. So don't have a final answer on the bottom yet.
I just love this artwork. Thank you so much for putting Thomas Foon Chu in a prominent position on the building. And I love the photographic image. And I know you'll be able to pull that off with a mosaic, like you said, from far away and then coming in. I just think that shows a lot of respect for him and what he has done. I love the incorporation of the labels, what the cans look like. That's very fun. And the nod to other things that have taken place since this factory, the cannery, was there. Thank you for that. I'm wondering, you talked about working with the developer on the historic panels. So what are those going to be like? And I'm assuming, so this is why I'm asking, that those are going to be in the interior of the building. They won't be somehow on the exterior of the building. And where will these panels be?
Where are they?
Yeah.
That's an excellent question. And it's not decided yet. We have actually a meeting tomorrow with that team to see their first pass at what they're thinking. I think there was a discussion about how these can be available if the retail isn't rented out. So there's a lot of questions. That's why I think we're still in the middle of discussing this, because and then if you have a retail, how do you make it so they work with whatever the branding is of the retail, or do you want to put them outside and have that be a solution so it's always available? So I think right now great question. We don't know the answer, and that's iterative at this time. And again, happy to bring that back once we have the total solution for the project, because to your question about how will they talk to each other, whatever that might be, I think it's all part of the solution that celebrates the history of the site. There was also, I don't know if Elise brought this up, I may have missed it, the council was thinking of renaming Portage to Thomas Foon Chu Street or Way or something like. So there's a lot of celebration of this history at the site, where before it was very quiet on the topic. So it's really kind of compelling and exciting to see that.
Yes, it is exciting. And I just love this artwork. So I want to make sure that it gets to shine. But also, you're right, the historic panels are so important. So people who do want to walk that history, maybe there's some way they can do that without interfering with this really beautiful installation. Thank you.
I'm also going to concur with my fellow commissioners. I think this is a really beautiful piece, and I look forward to seeing the progression. I do have a just suggestion of maybe including a female inventor as well, because I think the three additional photos you had are all white males. So just a friendly suggestion.
Note taken. Thank you.
I do have one follow-up question, which is in the fabrication of the material. It sounds like it's it's a unique process for fabricating, and I'm just wondering if you are also planning out redundancies in case you need to do any type of restoration down the road. Just because it's ground level, I don't know what the opportunities of damages will be. And so that, in case there are any plannings for repairs and whatnot, always thinking about that sweater with the beads, you always have extra beads. So
the technical term you're looking for is called attic stock. And that's in this kind of thing. Kyung-mi, do you know how they store your designs, or how does that work with them?
What I've got when I did the projects, usually they send us a bag with the combination, assortment of the colors that they've used for the project. And I really haven't had an opportunity to have to use it. And these guys will also come already mounted on aluminum panels, and because of that, it will be pretty hard to destroy. I think when the edges are exposed, when the vulnerability happens, but since these are all the edges will be protected, I think the vandalism is very hard. And also these are very graffiti proof because they're really shiny surface. Things can be just wiped off, paint and things like that. So, but usually they do come with a bag of extra tiles that any competent tile setter can replace.
Yeah, it's always a guess between, because you don't want to order like duplicates of the whole mural because the budget doesn't allow it, and you want to spend it on, right? So it's like you get enough for a small repair, but if for some reason a car ends up coming into this, that's a major conservation effort, and you would be sending it back to the fabricators and redoing it or dealing with it at that point. So yeah, it's always a tough balance between how much do you hold aside in case of, and then just kind of hope for the best and plan for the best as you can.
Yeah, I think there are mosaics actually that are done by this fabricator in the 60s
We have one at BART.
A few BART stations, and they are, the only, some of them have fallen out, but they're all easy to repair, and those were the ones installed directly onto the wall. But the walls tend to have movements, so the cracks happen. But since these will be mounted on panels, they're actually each panel will move independently, so it's very much more secure against that kind of movement. And I've seen the big panel. I think that might have been done by them as well, by the same fabricator at one of the BART stations. And the big panel work seemed to be really holding up well after 6 decades, 7 decades, 6 decades.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I have one follow-up question. I'm assuming there'll be some sort of label explaining the piece, but one of the things too that's often challenging is seeing an image, like a photo, and then learning more about it, right? And knowing the history of that photo. And so I was wondering what you're thinking in terms of allowing people opportunities to learn more about the mural, just without just looking at an artwork label.
We've had an initial conversation about potentially some sort of collaboration. I think Gloria Hom has a historic. We actually need to talk to her. We talked about potentially, is the library an opportunity for to store local history, or potential for QR codes? If so, where would the web page live? So we have started that discussion in relation to the mural and the historic the historic panels that we'll be doing. So there's no solution yet. Any ideas are most welcome. I mean, a lot of times you don't want to. It's that balance between having an artwork that you just want to, experience, and then to your point, it's like, hey, but who is this, and who are these guys next to him, and so it's like, how much do you explain away, or how much do you have on site? it's always an interesting balance. And then I don't know what sort of programming Palo Alto necessarily does as far as public art tours or things like that. So we're absolutely open to any ideas or thoughts that you might have on how this might be successful that way.
I have a quick question about the historic panels.
Mhm.
How big are they going to be, and what medium are they going to be done in?
I have no idea. I mean, perfectly honest, Red. And that goes to the fact that we are just initiating that work. So it may be, they may vary because there might be indoor ones and there might be outdoor ones. If they're outdoor, probably like an enamel, a metal enamel or something like that. Indoor, the sky's the limit as far as materials. But we're working with the team Volume SF. I don't know if you've ever worked with them, but they've done a lot of different really exciting. I think they just finished a piece in San Jose, and I can't remember what it was on, but they did just finish something down there. And that was an outdoor piece. So they've worked both outdoors and indoors in exhibit type design, graphic design, and all that range of kind of really dynamic, exciting, and visually engaging elements. So I look to their expertise way beyond my expertise as far as materials that could really kind of material shapes, sizes, all sorts of things that kind of make the story come alive.
And one thought is that I don't think the placement of those historic panels, you don't want them to detract from either piece.
Right. Good point. Yeah. So where they go is obviously going to be a interesting question. I mean, there's lots of room to the right of the east facade, but that gets to more the private side of the building, if you will, the business side of the building or the residential. So it's really the kind of I keep turning around the south facade going down that way if they're outdoors, or if they're indoors, that retail space, or potentially, if it's not retail, it might be open to the community. That's still under discussion. They could be up against the glass. There's ways to put stuff to glass now that are really exciting. So there's lots of options at this point. And again, I'll know more tomorrow.
And if we don't have any more additional questions or comments, I think we'll make a motion to approve the public art in private development by artist Hyomi Shin for this project. Do we have a motion? I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the artwork for this private development by artist Hyomi Shin. And do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call. Commissioner Miyagi?
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Waltock?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Thank you so much. We
Thank you
really
very
are
much,
looking
Vicky.
forward to this artwork.
Thank you.
Next item is again another public art in private development, and this is amendment to the final approval for artwork at 2600 El Camino Real to approve a replacement artwork by artist Bruce Beasley.
Thank you. We have a brief presentation for this one. It's highly unusual to have 3 private development projects come before the commission in one night. I know it's a bit of a marathon. So thank you. Let me just walk you through a little history of this project. It's at 2600 El Camino Real. And this project has had quite a long history. I'm also joined by Mike Rode from Sandhill Property Company, who is the applicant for this. Let's go to the next slide. So the timeline, they received their final approval for artwork from the Public Art Commission in September 2016, but this project really began in 2015 with the initial meetings, with the artist selection, with the design development. So this has had quite a long road. After the approval 2016, it took some time for them to pull their building permits. And then of course, COVID hit, which impacted a lot of construction and also impacted the artist's ability to source materials. She also suffered some health issues. So when the building was completed and ready to move into in December of 2020, the city entered into an agreement with Sandhill Property Company to place the public art funds into an escrow account until such time that the artwork was installed by the end of 2021. It has been extended a couple of times, and unfortunately, it's evident that that artist is not going to be able to deliver the artwork. That became apparent earlier in 2023, and that agreement has been terminated. So the applicant is still really wants to have artwork in front of their building. Sandhill Property Company commissioned the large Barbara Greigutis pieces at 1050 Page Mill, and also the large Gordon Huther pieces over on Hanover. So they have a track record for really wanting to integrate artwork, but at this point, it's challenging to do that with a completed building. They are on a time crunch because this agreement will terminate December 31st. So staff has been working with them to identify an artwork that could be installed on the site. Next slide. It's taking time. The gremlins, just be nice. So some of the criteria we looked at were artworks that are ready to install by the end of the year. Artworks that'll have a small enough footprint that they will not interfere with the pedestrian circulation on site. Artworks that will contrast with the building using either color or curvilinear form, because the building itself, you will see, has very sort of, straight angles to it. Of course, taking into account the artist's resume and reputation, maintenance concerns, because the maintenance is the obligation of the applicant, of course, is top of mind, and ease of installation and permitting, and of course, finally, the budget. So let's go to the next slide. So staff reached out to artists and regional galleries with sculpture available. Being the Bay Area, it is unusual to find artists who have a lot of sculpture in that budget of that scale that's going to be impactful, ready to go. But we did find some great options. Sandhill Property Company reviewed 11 different sculpture options, responded to one of the works, not the one that was shown, but a different work by artist Bruce Beasley, and decided to go out to Beasley's studio in Oakland and chose the piece Aeolus 10. I do have the book here of Bruce's 60-year retrospective, and this is another piece from that series. So here is the building. You can see what I mean by it having a lot of straight lines to it. The area that we're looking at is immediately to the left of the orange planters, where the white stops and the sort of dark overhang begins. That is the front entrance. Thank you. The front entrance to the building, and makes the most sense as far as high visibility and approachability for artwork. And so here we have a rendering of Aeolus 10 in sight. So I'm standing on the sidewalk, and there are the steps right there, and the front entrance to the building is on the other side of the person who is standing there. The piece on its base is 88 inches high, 70 inches wide, and 30 inches deep. So it's pretty substantial. And because the artwork makes use of negative space, it fills the space more than some of the other options that were evaluated. This series in particular was something, intriguingly enough, that Mr. Beasley began during COVID, at a time where things were shut down, and he started working with virtual reality. So creating shapes and forms with his goggles until he found a form that he liked and set it aside. And he was trying to find something joyful in all of the darkness that was that time in COVID. So this was his response to COVID in a joyful way. And he put these various forms together, and then found that there wasn't a way to translate those forms into CAD files to make it an actual object. So he had to hire someone to create the technology to make the CAD files so that he could 3D print these smaller sculptures and then send them to the fabricator to have them scaled up. So what you see here is a stainless steel piece from the Aeolus series. And then And so I was just gonna go visit Bruce Beasley's site. We did attach his resume. He is very accomplished and in museum collections throughout the world. So I thought we might take a moment to look at his page and see if you have any questions about his work or his career. Again, this was his 60-year retrospective. And if you go to artworks, I don't know if I'm going to crash your computer, Aeolus series. So here you get a sense of the whole series of objects that he made. And hopefully we don't crash the computer. And again, I do have Mike Road here from Sandhill Property Company if there are any questions for us or for Sandhill. And do we have any questions from the public? Okay. Yes.
I just had a question about where it is on Page Mill.
It's
the
on
site.
El Camino.
It's on. Okay, where is it on El Camino?
It's on El Camino as you approach Page Mill. So I don't know if the slide deck is still up. We go back to the slide that showed the building.
Yeah.
When you're looking at the building, to the left of it is the playing fields that are on the corner of El Camino and Page Mill.
Okay, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. So it's the last building before you get to the playing fields.
So, and it's next to that very modern building. There's a new modern building at Page Mill and where Hanover comes in.
And Page Mill where Hanover comes in. So we're on El Camino.
Here. It's here and then you go Page Mill, and then that building's here with the light sculpture.
Oh, okay, yes, okay, yes, yeah, okay, got it, sorry.
But remember on
On
that
El Camino.
corner is a very large installation and I can't remember the name of it right
That
now.
would be Fletcher Benton.
Beautiful.
I just had one quick question before we go into Bruce Beasley. Was he the only artist in your presentation of potential sculptures that already has work in Palo Alto?
No,
Okay.
no, it was a broad grouping of artists.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Mhm.
So I'm just looking at the rendering.
Mhm.
It looks like there's a planter box right in front of this piece of artwork, and I'm just wondering, I don't know what the intention is with that planter box, but are we going to end up planting things that would sort of obscure the artwork from the outside?
My discussion with Mike was that no, they do plan to replant it, but not anything that would obscure the sculpture.
And or is there like a height limitation? Like, I don't know, because from this picture, it looks pretty similar in height. And so it's almost like anything you plan could potentially block it. So if you make the sculpture a little higher.
I think that's a function also of the angle of the image. It makes the planter look much higher than it really is. But yes, that's something that we'll definitely take into account to make sure that whatever goes in there is not going to obscure it.
Yeah, I like the sculpture that's going to be put in there, and I remember when this first started way back when with this, and then we visited Bruce Beasley's studio way back. When was that? At least 10 years ago, and I remember he had just started with this 3D printing of some of the sculptures that he'd done, and so this is kind of reminiscent of those first 3D printing sculptures that he's done. So it's a little exciting to see this, and the size I think is just right for that building.
I want to thank Elise and Nadia and Sandhill for going for it and trying to find an existing sculpture that would work in this space. I mean, it's highly unusual to have this happen. I would imagine to work with an artist for years and then not be able to have a final piece. So thank you for pushing it and finding a beautiful piece that will work well there. I appreciate it.
Great.
And I just want to echo what Lauren said, because I think maybe through the working on this project and in-depth understanding of this project, that's how you're able to find, a replacement artwork that almost looked like it was originally intended and designed for this site. So good job on that. Okay, so barring no additional comments, do we have a motion to approve the amendment to the final approval of artwork for 2600 El Camino Real to approve the replacement artwork by artist Bruce Beasley?
So moved.
Do we have a
Second.
second?
Second.
All right, roll call. I guess we start with Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Waltok,
Yes.
and yes for me as well. All right, next line and next item. Another public art for Bulwer Park. This is staff recommended the approval of artwork design concept by Jean Centauri and Russell Rock of Urban Rock Art and Design Studio.
Yeah, so we are joined by Joe Sachs from our team, who is going to walk you through an introduction, and then we do have the artists joining us virtually. Okay, Joe.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Sachs. I'm the Public Art Project Manager for the Bulwer Park project, and I wanted to give you some background and explain the process a little bit that's got us to where we are now. Next. So the Bulwer Park Renovation Capital Improvement Project was initially set to focus improvements on the existing Bulwer Park parcel, which is roughly the lower triangular area that you see on this map. But the purchase of the Birch Street property expanded the scope of this project to include this new parcel, and Nadia is circling that with her cursor. That's the upper left-hand portion, which will include now a dog park and a basketball court. Next, please. I wanted to outline these major milestones of community meetings and engagement to date. Public art staff presented opportunities for public art integration into Bulwer Park to the Public Art Commission on August 18, 2022. The PAC was supportive of the opportunities and integration of art into the park and approved funds in the amount of $90,000 plus a 10% contingency for this project. Public art staff attended the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting on September 27th, 2022 to gather their feedback. The PRC was supportive of the opportunities presented for art integration, and Parks Commissioner Oche volunteered to participate in the artist selection process. Public art staff attended the Ventura Neighborhood Social with an information station. And so after gaining this feedback from the PAC and from the PRC and the Neighborhood Association from the Neighborhood Social, we reached out to artists in the public art pre-qualified pool of artists. When looking at this pool, we selected artists whose media lended itself to the public art opportunities that were presented in the park, which included murals, functional sculpture, and railing treatments. And ultimately, we presented 20 artists and their portfolios of work to the artist selection panel. And ultimately, the artist selection panel chose Urban Rock Design, and you all approved Urban Rock for that project on November 17th, 2022. And council approved the contract with Urban Rock on December 19th, 2022. So skipping ahead to this year, in February, the artists visited the site and met with multiple staff from different city departments and a city historian to gather background. They walked the site and the neighborhood. And then March 8th, 2023, Public Art staff and the artists hosted an online Meet the Artist event for the community. The meeting was recorded and made available to the public afterward to allow any members of the public who are not available to view the video to make comments via email for the next 2 weeks. So go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I just wanted to now get into a little more detail on our artist selection panel, which included 2 neighborhood residents of the Ventura community who are also artists, including Amber Morgan Smith and Ken Joy, who is with us tonight, Cynthia Cow, who is an artist and public art administrator, Parks Commissioner Oche, our own Public Art Committee Commissioner Chandrika Marla, who is an artist in the Cubberley Artist Studio program, and Peter Jensen, the landscape architect and park planner from the city. When we presented the 20 artists from the pre-qualified pool to them, we asked them to consider artistic excellence and strength of their previous work, and also consider if their previous projects were well integrated into the site and the surrounding setting, especially considering the durability of materials, because this is an exterior project in a park setting. So Janine Centuri and Russell Rock are collectively known as Urban Rock Art and Design Studio. These are some of the images of their previous projects that were included in the artist selection panel process. I think these projects were especially attractive to the committee. And these are some more examples. So the okay. So I just wanted to okay, jumped ahead a slide ahead of me. Okay, so the community shared a lot of history of the site during the community engagement meeting, including information about the cannery building, which we saw previously earlier in this meeting, and the influence of the demographics of the community, housing, and the inclusiveness of the neighborhood came up several times. They discussed the way that the community uses the park. In addition to the site tour, the artists and I met with the city historian, Steve Steiger, who talked with us at great length about the namesake for the park, John Bulwer, and also the history of that part of town, which has become the Ventura neighborhood. Okay, so next, please. The artists have been working on their concept since then, and have been communicating with public art staff and refining it to the concept that you see presented to you. And I just wanted to show this before I turn it over to the artists to explain this in much greater detail, to give you some context for the next slide, which is next, please. There we go. The proposed location within the park for this piece, which is this area that's within that red oval there. It's very visible from one of the main park entrances. And this area will be surrounded by decomposed granite and deer grass. The deer grass will be irrigated with drip irrigation, so the sculpture would not be subject to sprinklers as if it were set in a grassy area. It will also be surrounded by some landscaping boulders. One of the desires that the community expressed was that if there were to be a sculpture, that it not break up the use of the park. For example, putting it out in an open field where people play frisbee and football and that sort of thing. So this is surrounded in an area that it will be not obtrusive, but it'll be clearly visible from a large portion of the park. Okay, so now I want to turn it over to your artists, Janine and Russell, to explain their concept in greater detail.
Hello.
Hi. Just give us a moment here. Oh, I think you have to stop the screen share in order for us to be able to do that. Thank you. Just give us a moment here, please. Okay. Are you, oops.
You went ahead.
Are you able to see our presentation, the first slide?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. We're very happy to be here with you this evening. And I'm Janine, this is Russell, and we're going to walk you through a little bit about our process and how we got to where we are. So I think Joe did a great job of explaining, some of the steps, but just to reiterate some of the highlights, when Russell and I came up to visit, we spent a good amount of time in the park itself and also in the neighborhood. And we noticed what an intimate setting the park is, and how the scale of the neighborhood and how it's really tightly stitched into the park. We had a community meeting online, as Joe had mentioned, and got some really good input and feedback from that meeting. We also, while we were in Palo Alto, visited with the historian and got some good background material. And then we began to develop some concepts and work on forms. We developed a couple of concepts that we're not showing all of them to you tonight, but we arrived at where we are now and then developed it a little bit further with regards to form.
So the map of the park, which we've seen.
Okay. And then just to take you through the steps, Joe was showing the fairly developed version of the scheme, of the idea, but we started out with these kinds of cardboard studies. The idea being that we were calling the piece Settlement, and we wanted it to be very much about the neighborhood. And this idea we kept hearing about, and everyone expressed how open the neighborhood is, how diverse and dynamic it is, and how it's this place of, it's an artistic neighborhood. It's very much about openness and inclusion. And so.
And it offered an opportunity for the settlement by minorities that other parts of Palo Alto didn't. So we felt that that sense of home was important.
And so we're just taking you through some of the steps of our process through model making. This got a little more refined, as you can see, a little more detail, starting to think about color, starting to think a little more about materiality and how this house shape could be formed. And then yet a little further development also in, this is another physical model, thinking a little more carefully about the materials, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. But the idea of settlement is this notion that, as Russell is saying, that it's a place, a neighborhood that's very much about settling and being comfortable and open and also dynamic. So there's this sort of tension between it feeling like it's forming itself into a house, but also being a little bit changeable. And so as you move around the piece, you get different senses of how it's shaped.
And there are different ways to inhabit the piece. There's a sort of formal seat within the piece, but the height of the floor, as it were, of the piece is bench height. So one can sit in various different ways with the piece.
And then this is a digital model. So we translated the physical models. Now we're into a digital environment. And then starting to, get a little more precise with all of the shapes. So here we're just talking about the concept and the materials we should mention. So go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, me?
Yeah.
So it basically is a powder coated aluminum tube ladder frame that makes up the structure of the piece, and then the cladding is plastic recycled lumber for the most part, which would be screwed into the frame with a flush set security screws from a company that we use out of Arizona. And then that plastic recycled lumber comes in various, you've probably seen it as Adirondack chairs and other sorts of outdoor furniture. And so it would come in a couple different colors that we're speccing. And then there is we're looking at having one board, as it were, to be a piece of aluminum that will have words milled into it, so that we can include some of the conceptual framework of the thinking of why we are doing this piece.
I passed around a material sample for the plastic lumber while you were speaking.
Oh, great. Thank you, Joe.
Commissioners have all felt it.
Great. So this is the top view of the piece, from the sky that you won't see, but just to show you how it has that sort of wrapped shape. And then
and you might notice that the colored band, that those bands, the red and the orange, those would be the aluminum bands in the piece, and one would be sort of information words that we've yet to workshop with the community, but we have that on slate to do so. And so one would be sort of about the neighborhood, and the other would be concerning history in the area.
And then this is the imagery that Joe had shared. So yeah, I think this isn't the actual park photo, just to show that it's in a park-like setting, of course. But as you move around, as you can see from these, it does have a lot of different sort of characteristics. And then I think this is just showing the close-up of the words that Russell was mentioning. These words are simply stand-ins for now. We were going to be, workshopping that with the neighborhood. And just a little more, just a tad bit about the materials again. On the left, those are the plastic recycled lumber, of which you have the Aruba blue piece, I believe. These are the two colors that we were considering. And on the right, you have powder coated aluminum. The very right is the blue of the frame. That would be aluminum that's welded, engineered, of course, and then welded. And then the orange and the sort of yellowish color are also part of the strips that would have the words embedded in them. And then this is just a little bit of background on these materials with which we've used, and we're familiar with how they go together, how they work, how they last, all of that. But Russell was mentioning the Adirondack chairs on the top right. You may have seen those. That's an example of this plastic recycled lumber. It's also used heavily in things like boardwalks, on ground surfaces in public environments. It's also used in playgrounds and parks and things like that. There's the brand name that you might be more familiar with is Trex, is a common name. That's a similar but different kind of product that's used a lot in decks. But I recently worked on that outdoor classroom on the two photos in the middle and the bottom where we used powder coated steel and this material. So I think that's our that's our last image. But we're very excited to be here, and we're open to all of your input and comments, of course. Thank you. Should we stop the screen share, or would you like us to go back to anything?
I think you can hold for now until we've got commissioner comments. I just wanted to see if we had any members of the public that wanted to speak to the project. No, so it sounds like it's all commissioner questions now.
Okay.
Can you go back to the prototype? That's in the, yeah.
Yes.
I think it's beautiful, and I'm really excited to see what comes of it. I do have just some kind of ADA questions to ask you. The platform, it looks like concrete. I don't know how tall it is, but if you can kind of discuss that. And then it also does look like there are some pretty some corners and edges that I would be a little concerned about. And so I was just hoping you can just talk, and also the curved, not curved, but a triangular, just in terms of safety. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your thoughts.
So I just wanted to mention, as we get into answering those questions, the concrete slab that the sculpture is sitting on in this image, we've discussed with the city landscape architect the possibility of placing it on a series of multiple concrete pilings, so that it appears that it's emanating from the ground and more integrated into the site, rather than on this concrete slab. And so this is kind of a, for conceptual purposes at this point, but that's probably the direction we're heading. So in that case, the edge of the concrete slab wouldn't be a barrier for somebody getting closer to it. But I'll let Janine and Russell discuss or answer your other questions.
As far as thank you for that question. It's a really good one, and I think it is something that we do consider in our projects. So yeah, as Joe's saying, there would not be a step up at all to where the gray sort of slab-like element is. And the idea of the piece is that, you might just want to kind of, I'm sorry we don't have a scale figure here, but that what looks like sort of like the floor is really just at about seat height, so like a chair height. So you could just sit on that edge and have your feet hanging over the edge. That's one way to sort of inhabit it in a very sort of minimal way. You could also then step up into it and have a little fun sort of sitting on that seat or leaning against that, the thing in the foreground that looks like a lounge back surface. The idea of all of that is that we heard a lot from the community that they wanted something interactive, and they didn't want something to simply look at, but something that you could kind of engage. So that's where all of that is coming from. As far as the edges of all of this, yes, in fact, Russell and I were just talking a lot about that today, and how to soften some of the edges. So the plastic recycled lumber edges, that sort of sticks out a little tiny bit, and that's by intention, so that because there's sort of a softness to that material. And so we're not concerned about that. We are concerned about some of the metal edges, and those we would look to soften, round, cut. We would have mending plates on that aren't quite shown in here quite yet, on the blue frame. And so this is conceptual, and there would be some attention to trying to soften some of those edges.
Fantastic, thanks.
We heard from community members more than once that they would like to have something that was climbable. And I think this is, the concept is responding to that as well.
How tall is this? How tall is this structure?
It's about, at the peak, I think it's about
A little over.
12,
Yeah.
12 feet, a little over 12 feet.
No, a little 12 or a little bit less, right around 12
Yeah.
feet. Yeah. To the
Okay,
very
now-
bottom to the very top.
Okay, thank you. And Joel, you mentioned that the community wanted some climbability, which I think could be a problem, especially with young kids climbing to the top of this and falling off, and with some of these sharp edges could be a problem. Uh, I do have some problems with that, with the safety issues of this. It is a park. Families are going to be using it. There are going to be young kids around climbing it, that sort of stuff. I do like the point, Joe, that you made about the pillars for it to sit on, so it looks like it's rising out of the ground, which is good. So if somebody does fall off, they'll fall off into the grass and ground, which will soften the fall than falling on concrete. So that part I like, but I think climbability is one thing, but for some small child to climb up 12 feet onto the top of this and then rolling off, or having to have the fire department come out to get them off, may be a problem.
Well, let me be more specific about the climbability that we're trying for here. Climbability on the lower portion of it is what is intended, and we've made a particular effort to not have any horizontal elements on the sides, so that you cannot climb it like a ladder. So those are all vertical, smooth strips that don't offer any handholds in order to climb up higher onto the roof portion. That's the intention.
Okay, but kids can be very ingenious on where they climb. I know with my kids and my grandkids, I had that problem of them climbing up things. So again, that's a concern that I have.
That's
Okay.
a great point, Ben, and that's kind of where I was talking, and also about like ADA. It's interesting because there's a piece in San Francisco, these wooden blocks kind of that are at an angle that I see a ton of kids at Golden Gate Park climbing up. I've tried to do it myself and I couldn't do it. So it's amazing to see the little kids in action. But this is kind of a general kind of leeway, but legal question. Kind of that I think is helpful maybe in the future as well, as we're talking about public art. But if a child does climb on it and something happens, GD forbid, what's the liability? Like, are we, like, as for the public art, is it if a child does, or a person falls off of a public art piece, like, are we held accountable as the city, or is it something that discretion? Or
as a city, but keep in mind, as Joe mentioned, this is a conceptual rendering, and it has to go through a lot of rigorous review for safety, for engineering, for all of those things. So yes, edges will need to be rounded, things like that, but we always like to bring the conceptual proposal to the commission for approval before we spend all that time and effort and money to go down the road to iron out all those things. So those will happen as we get through detailed design, right? But the city does have liability insurance should someone get injured on city property.
I love the design. I love it feels very dynamic to me. It feels very bold. And at the same time, it's open. I just like that it has this kind of very, especially from this angle, a very small outline, and you can see through it. So it feels very open. And it feels kind of palapa-like to me a little bit with, that the roof. And I like that there's all the sorts of seating options. And I love the material. I'm working with that material right now. So I know that the Trex material. So I think that's a great solution, and just that it can be such bold colors. I also really appreciate the text element, and just having discussed everything with the community, it sounds like you guys really did a nice job of integrating their wishes and desires and to put some of their words in there. I think that that's a really nice solution. So I just think it's fun and playful. Listening to my fellow commissioners here, I do have that son that climbs on everything, and I don't know how he does it. So I hope those sorts of things are addressed. But other than that, I think it's a great solution. Thank you for your creativity.
Yeah, just wanted to add in a thank you because I did watch the video and see how you invited and welcomed the public in to collaborate. And so I feel confident that you will also do that when choosing the words to really reflect what the neighborhood feels about this, about the neighborhood and about this property here. So thank you. Looks fun, and we appreciate your work.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I think this is going to be a piece of artwork that we will learn to love it more and more. You know, I'm really impressed by the elegance of the design. And I think as it unfolds and people get to interact with it more, they will come to appreciate the elegance of the design. And I think, and I appreciate you know, at least in educating the commission on sort of the multi steps of building this, including the risk management aspect of it. So, you know, so we'll defer to you to manage that part further down the road. I do have a couple of questions. One is, you mentioned the durability of this piece, the material. Like to kind of understand what the sort of the expected life expectancy of this material is. That's number one. Number two, just out of curiosity, the color combination, how you came, what inspired the color combination?
Thank you. As far as the materials and the life expectancy, the metal parts are powder coated, aluminum powder coated. We use it a lot in our projects. They do have, I don't know the exact life expectancy, but it's really good. I can say it's cleanable if it were to be, you know, graffitied or anything like that. There's a sacrificial coating, but there's also ways to clean it.
And touch up, isn't it?
Touch up, paint, things like that. As far as the plastic recycled lumber, it's as you can see from the piece you have there with you, the color is through and through. So if it were to get, first of all, you can't easily paint it. If you do paint it, it's very easy to clean it off with soap and water and that kind of thing. But if you scratch it, the color is still there. Of course, you might not want to see scratches on it, but it is resistant to those kinds of things. And for durability, they say something like 50 years. I mean, that's what they say in terms of the product that we're looking at. So, and you know, we see it in public settings a lot. So I know that they, including like seaside settings, boardwalks and things like that. So you know, we're mindful of that. Of course, nothing is forever, but we're very mindful of, we want it to be extremely durable. If by chance one of the boards were to be, you know, so damaged it looked really bad, they would have to be replaced. And that's a possibility that, you know, that these boards would be mechanically fastened, and so they could be removed and then replaced if they needed to be. And then there was the question about the color palette.
Yeah.
You want to get that one, or you want me to? You get that one.
I get that one.
You get that one.
Yeah, I guess it's something that the blue and the green seem to be out of the available colors. They seem to be the ones that best fit in the park, and it's sort of the you know, blue interior with the green exterior was our way of thinking of how that makes the inside perhaps a little more inviting. And then the colored strips were picked for some contrast against that. And so we picked complementary colors, not, you know, the direct strong ones, but they're still the blue, orange, and red, green sort of complements, so that those things stand out.
And I just want to emphasize Janine's point about being able to replace the boards, because this is a commercially available material. This is actually a really rare opportunity when you could order more identical colored and sized boards to replace something in the event that they were vandalized or damaged.
And I just want to say one other thing about the material. The innovative thing is it's much better than wood. It weathers everything. It's incredible. I mean, we don't have to worry as much in California, but it's also a little bit flexible. Like, it's not going to be so rigid that it won't respond. It will respond to weather in a positive way. So
One just quick concern with this material, which I'm sure you'll take into consideration, is it isn't so hot in Northern California, but sometimes that material and heat can be hot. So I think we'll be okay with that, but just something to think about, and with the aluminum strips as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. I want to follow up on that just a little bit with the aluminum. It does get hot at times here. Does that aluminum retain? I know it's not like steel, but does it retain heat where somebody could get burned on it on a very warm day if they were to touch it? Both the strips and the outer housing.
Yeah, most of the contact points for the framing are clad, and so you would have to. What's exposed is underneath, and so that's shaded to begin with. As far as the framing goes, the strips, those will get warmer than probably the plastic recycled lumber will. I don't know that they would get so hot that you would burn yourself on them, but they would certainly be warmer to the touch in direct sunlight than the adjacent plastic recycled lumber.
So I have, it's funny because I'm thinking of all the people that are going to use this space. I think it will be used quite well. You might have to do a sign up list. But I asked this question about another public art piece. I'm going to ask again in terms of the lighting plan. What have you thought about that? And also just in general at the park, are there overhead lights, or are they on like 24/7, or how does it?
There are some lights in the park, the pole lights or cobras. I'm not quite sure what they've been called out. We've just seen them on the plan, and this particular piece doesn't have lighting on it in particular. That would be a kind of a budget item to bring the electricity over and fixtures, and that's probably $15,000, maybe, somewhere around there, maybe even 20 to do that. So
We are coordinating with Joe and through Joe and Elise with the landscape
Peter.
architect Peter, and he's aware of, he's so that's a good question. I'd love for there to be lighting. I think it is not within the scope of our budget for this, but perhaps it could be incorporated into the park design.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good point. We'll make a point to discuss that with Peter Jensen.
Okay. Well, thank you all for the thoughtful discussion, and thank you for the presentation. It's really lovely. We've been very, very excited about this piece of artwork. With no additional comments, I'd like to motion for approval of the artwork design concept by artists Janine Centauri and Russell Rock for Bulwer Park. Do we have a motion?
I will motion to approve the artwork design concept by artists Janine Centauri and Russell Rock of Urban Rock Art and Design Studio for Bulwer Park.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, let's do a roll call. Commissioner Miyagi?
No.
Oh. Commissioner Taylor?
Yes. But I would like to take in, I don't know if I can do this now, but I do, I know that you will take in consideration the safety aspects of it.
Yeah.
So,
Of course.
yeah, so I'll add that.
Commissioner Wolftalk,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
and yes for me as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item is the King Artist Residency. There's a staff recommendation to form an ad hoc committee to discuss next steps for the King Artist Residency and to work with staff to come back with the commission in October with a recommendation for next residency.
Yeah, so as you all know, we usually have our retreat in September, and unfortunately due to code art and other scheduling conflicts, we were unable to find a date until January. And you may recall at our last retreat, we had discussed completing 2 residencies and then really coming back with a recommendation for how we would perhaps alter it, change it as we move out for the next call. But in order to keep continuity, we want to launch that call sooner than later. And so we thought it would be beneficial to have an ad hoc committee, which is 2 commissioners
Okay.
who would work closely with staff and then come back with a recommendation in October.
Any discussions? If not, do we have any recommendations? I mean, not recommendations, any volunteers? We need 2 commissioners for this.
I volunteer. I volunteer,
Yes.
Senior.
Thank you, fantastic. Do we have another person?
I would like to volunteer for this as well.
Okay, fantastic. Then we do have 2 members for the ad hoc committee and to come back in October with some recommendations. All right, let's see. Do we have any public letters? I believe there is one.
Okay. We need to vote to on that ad hoc committee.
Vote? Oh, yes, got it. Yes, of course.
I know it's
I
getting
thought
late, sorry.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to form an ad hoc committee with 2 members, Commissioner Miyagi and Commissioner Gordon. Do I have a second for that?
I second.
Okay, roll call. Commissioner Miyagi,
Yes.
Commissioner Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor,
Yes.
Commissioner Waltuck,
Yes.
and yes for me as well. All right, next item, I believe we have a public letter in the package. Yes, we do. And do we need to read this into it? Do we need to submit it into the record?
No.
Okay. Considered? I mean, I reviewed it. I think there's some recommendations for additional attention to bring public art into Midtown, and that was really the intention for attending the ice cream social, to socialize and introduce and remind folks that we have a public art commission in the city of Palo Alto, and to share with the members of the Midtown community some of the projects that have been completed all throughout Palo Alto, and to invite them to consider bringing opportunities for incorporating public art in Midtown. So, all right. I guess, do we have any commissioner questions, comments, announcements, or future agenda items?
I have a question about our proposal going to city council about increasing the size of the commission, and
yeah.
if we have any updates on that.
Yes, well, thank you so much for your question. We did submit a letter to the city council. The city council has received it, and we're waiting to hear back from them.
Also, just a quick reminder, we do have some more slots left for commissioner signups for code art. So I think if we could send out that link one more time.
Okay.
It'd be great to get a few more slots in there.
Right.
There's also just a reminder of the board and commission event.
Yes.
Also, did we have a final date for the retreat or we don't? Yeah.
We do in January. Yes.
Yes,
Maybe I
a
missed that.
meeting request went out. It's in January. I think
Okay.
it's the second Friday in January.
Okay, I'll just double check.
I will resend just calendar updates for all the upcoming events, the retreat, the link for the volunteering opportunities, and also the boards and commissions recognition events. So,
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. I think, and the next item is adjournment. Thank you very much. Thanks for the marathon.